Great to have her with us today. Joey Rogers, pastor of the Pace Assembly of God Church. Joey, how are you?
Doing great. Doing great. It's changing times that we're living in, and we're running like crazy, but that's not a bad thing.
And it's probably not a new thing either.
No, it's not. We are always in full mode, and as I speak right now, I've got another produce truck of USDA produce that's coming towards us. So by the time the end of this week is out, we will have offloaded over 300,000 pounds of food to people that are in
Wow.
need. So it's been so when I say I'm a little bit busy, I got my blue jeans on today, and we're waiting for it to arrive. So
All right. So it's not really a little bit, it's a lot of bit busy.
it's a lot of bit busy. You're exactly right.
I've got to ask you on air versus off air, which I did prior to hitting the
Uh-oh,
record button.
here we go.
I know you haven't read all those books behind you. I mean, do you even know what's on the bookshelf behind you?
You know what? I actually do. I don't know. I have this. It's weird, but I've always loved books, and so behind me, I'm in my home office. It's called the Cave. Literally, I've got a little plaque over here that Rita and Taylor gave me years ago. Because by the time Saturday midday comes in, this is where I'm at until it's over. For the final touches. But everything that you see behind me, and it goes left and it goes right, is books that I've acquired, of course, over the years, and folks that have given me books and so forth. So each one of them are categorized. All these shelves are categorized. So I know, like to my right, this entire bookshelf here has to do with Bible prophecy. This one right here is halfway full with books on prayer and books of the Bible, as far as that goes, outlines and so forth. And a lot of this has to do with just sermon books and different books that I've acquired, leadership books over here, Holy Spirit, everything dealing with the Holy Spirit is in this section right here, families and ancient Jewish history stuff is over in this area. So I kind of know, and then I don't know, it's just a weird deal. I've been able to, that's the reason why I like tangible books instead of digital books, because there's something about it that I can kind of remember what in the table of contents where something might be, or at least it can get me there close. So I don't know. Somebody came in here and rearranged these books, I'd be in trouble.
And I guess now we can call you the caveman. I mean,
I am the caveman.
the caveman.
Similar looking and and otherwise, literally.
Do you read some secular books to sometimes call from for sermon material?
I don't read necessarily secular books. I do a lot of secular reading as far as that goes, but not books in that form. For the time that I have, I've got a lot of novels and things like that are here, but I don't usually spend a lot of time in there simply because of the amount of time that I need to read what I got to read to be ready week after week. But a lot of reading maybe for secular side, maybe articles or things like that, not necessarily a full book. I just had somebody give me this book yesterday. As a matter of fact, one of my senior saints, and I do like reading a whole lot of different authors. This one's John Piper, and a lot of people will know John Piper, but this one's called Coronavirus and Christ. It was actually the first message that I preached when this coronavirus started. I titled that, but one of my senior saints gave that to me, so I'll be reading that.
So it makes the shelf once it's read.
Generally speaking, if I find a book that I'm interested in, and for preachers, I usually can thumb through it pretty quick. I'll catch the first little bit of chapter if I'm standing in the store or whatever, or online, and then I'll read a little bit of the back chapter, and then who the author is, what their background is, what that's all about, and then it will go there. And typically I'm buying books not for the whole read, but particularly chapters or whatever that I found interesting, and I'll go there and look at that and see what the rest of it is, and then it goes on the shelf.
Is this thirst of knowledge kind of mandated because you want to put across an effective sermon, an effective message, or do you really have this this desire to learn more information?
Well, I've always wanted to be teachable. That's one mantra that I've had all of my life. I want to be teachable until the day I die, because you can never stop learning enough, and you want to broaden that through everything. So I read a lot of different material, and of course, a lot of it today is digital. So that just takes it. I mean, there's a lot of books that are up on this 10-foot bookshelf that are more decorative up there, because now it's all digitized. So a lot of those books that I used to have to, I would literally carry them in my car if I was traveling somewhere, whatever books that I might be reading on. And, it was quite a heavy deal, satchel after satchel, going with me into hotels, or, preaching, or wherever I was at. And, vacation. Rita would leave me a spot in the back of the car, so I would pile in with books and magazines and whatever else it was. So now a lot of it is digitized, and that's good. But I've always had a thirst for that. But I'll tell you, here's the backstory. You want the backstory. Whenever I started working for Glenn Lowry in the early 90s, Pastor Lowry at Pastor Pace Assembly, wherever we went, we hit the bookstores. And he gave me a serious addiction. And after that, I would hit every bookstore in any town, searching for it and so forth. And so this bad habit turned into a massive library. This is only part of it. I have a lot of books that are actually in boxes, put away in different locations. Some of it at storage, and some of it at the church. And it's a bad habit. After a while, I've probably got tens of thousands of dollars wrapped up in books. But so he started that addiction. But I will tell you, um, I've always told anybody who's been under my mentorship or whatever, young preachers or whatever, invest in yourself. If you are, if you're a car salesman, then buy everything you can on car selling, and do that. If you're a preacher, then invest in yourself, buy the books, and broaden your horizons through that by getting the information that you need to be the best that you can be at what you are. So that's kind of the road, the path.
Well, I mentioned before we went on the air, and then you mentioned a few moments ago wanting the backstory. So I want to go back. I mean, way back. Some folks don't know this, and you want to own up to it, that I've known you for a long time, back when you were a teenager.
I
And
mean,
and if I'm remembering correctly, it seems like you initially went into either fireman or paramedic type work.
oh yeah.
So give me and if memory serves me correct, that was very short lived, and you knew that wasn't your calling. So what got you where you need to be?
Well, there's been a lot of different things. At sometimes I've held, is it W-2s you get at the end of the year, W-4s, whatever. Sometimes I'd have multiple in a year. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Variety. So my parents were entrepreneurs. Dad worked at Gulf Power, and my mom worked at Sears and Roebuck. You'd have to really know something when you say Roebuck on it. But early in my life, in my high school years, middle school years, they bought a florist out on Racetrack Road. It's no longer there, but that was kind of the entry into our entrepreneurial years as far as that goes. So I worked in the florist business. Everything that I have done, I would have to say, looking in hindsight, has helped me and prepared me for where I am today. So I went in the florist with them and worked in there, of course, throughout my high school years, and then worked at Lance Cracker Company, selling crackers on the road all the way out to Freeport and all the way out to Seagrove Beach was my route. Worked at the fire department for about 3.5 years. That was always one of those things I wanted to do, and I was able to get on board at Ocean City Right. And my if I've got a legacy, it kind of lives on right now. My nephew, who I dropped in a pair of my bunker boots when he was just a small kid. I've got a little picture of it standing on the back of my car. I dropped him in those boots, and now he's just about to become a battalion chief at Ocean City Right. He's a paramedic, and he got in his blood real bad. He went in the military and became a firefighter in the military, and came out, and he now works at Ocean City Right Fire Department out there. So all of those things helped me prepare. And then we've been in ministry now for 30 some odd years, and knowing you and the Williamson family, anybody that knows that is just knowing the backstory right there, don't you know?
And that's the part of the story you want to keep quiet.
Mm,
Um,
mm.
but back to, though, when you decided that it was time to be a minister, I mean, at what point did you feel that calling, that leading, that you were supposed to head that direction? And did you answer immediately?
I felt my dad was a lay preacher. In fact, he started Oakland, what was Oakland Assembly of God on Jonquil down in Fort Walton. It's now EC Church, and just a little rabbit trail there. They were going to close the church, and I contacted the district, let them know my history with that. My father started that church in 1950, bought those two pieces of property there, and started the church. And they were going to close it because the crowd had gone down. So several years ago, we went in there. Pace Assembly adopted it as a parent church, and we went in and helped revitalize it. And then we literally merged it with Evangelistic Center. Tim Black is a pastor down there now, doing a great job. And so it's still alive and flourishing and growing today. So we're very thankful for that. But I knew when I was 9 years old, it was kind of a weird deal. Not a lot of people know this, so here's the backstory. Uh, Dad was pastoring, preaching at Pinecrest Holiness Church over in Niceville. So we would drive over there, and uh, as we drove, um, we would pass by the flight line of Eglin Air Force Base. This is totally weird right here. So I'm in the back seat, mom and dad up in the front. We're on our way over there. And when we passed by the flight line, the main flight line over there, I would always look over there, and it looked like the lights, the landing lights, looked like a pulpit. It kind of did like that. So I always said, someday I'm going to preach there, and they just laugh and all. But I felt the call of God early in my life. Obviously, you don't give a 9-year-old a pulpit. So it kind of developed, obviously we sang. As a matter of fact, it's really funny, Robert, because few days ago, we were the gospel carriers, and James DeStaven and Rita and me and Rob Sanders and Mike Koslow formed the group. And just a few weeks ago, Robert, Mike Koslow had recorded, or had somebody record a cassette of the one and only recording we have of the gospel carriers at Oakland Assembly. I think we sang like 150 songs, and we just got that. We just got a hold of it. It's some of it's awful, and some of it is just above awful. But you know, it was a live. It was our only live recording, so you actually hear people clapping, and they were all deaf. But it was a great time. A lot of memory. 1986 on that. Okay.
Wow.
But I've always known that I was going to preach at some point, and so fast forward, we were in Rita and I got married, and Greg and Diane Coleman, as a matter of fact, had sold their home, and they literally moved in with us for a short period of time. Their oldest daughter, and our son was Taylor. So we had two-year-old Taylors running around the house. And that was when I was driving the Lance Cracker truck. And of course, we traveled and sang with you guys, and did that kind of ministry for a long, long time. But we knew that there was something that was going to change, and we were traveling back and forth to Crestview, to Auburn Assembly up there when Brother Sim was a pastor up there.
Mm-hmm.
And he opened the door. He said, "Would you like to come and be an associate and do youth, and y'all do children and so forth?" And it was really a strange leap of faith for us. But I have a little notepad in here, a little flip pad, that God was dealing with my heart on that Lance Cracker truck. And sometimes I just pull over the side of the road and write down sermons. There's sermons in there I've never preached that God was just speaking to me. And one day, I'll never forget it. It's just, if you interrupt me if I'm going too long here.
No, you go on.
So I backed up that Lance Cracker truck because one of my stops was then OWJC. And I was doing the vending machines over there and so forth. And I backed that truck in. I was listening to Charles Stanley. And he was doing a preacher's conference. And he made the statement that caused me to kind of leap off of the page with it. He said, if any of you feel like you're called to preach, if you can do anything else, do it. And then I thought, man, I said, man, that's profound, because it caused me to think, if I can do anything else, then I better do that. And then it really burdened me for a long time. Prayed on it, and I figured out I couldn't do anything else. That's what I was called to do. So we were at they were the Colemans were sharing the house with us, mine and Rita's home, and I was driving the Lance Cracker truck, and I would listen to John Hagee preaching during the day and driving the truck and so forth on the radio. He preached two messages: "Take a Stand," and another one that I literally ordered from him: "Take a Stand and Preach the Word." And those really set me forth. And there was a day when Brother Sin made that offer, and I was just weeping on that truck, and just writing sermons, and felt that John Hagee kind of pushed me over the edge. And I went home and I sat down with Greg, who had been in ministry for a long time. I said, "Greg, what do you think about this?" He said, "Man, that's it. It's time to jump." So I took the step off of the Lance Cracker truck, and I'm thinking to myself, man, this is my home place. I bought the place that I was born and raised, and Taylor was born there, and everything was great. And I heard one night automatic gunfire coming from a housing project that was just below where we lived on Common Street in Fort Walton. And stupid me, I walk out of the house and walk right out to the edge of the road. The guy across the street walks out to the edge of the road, and there we are standing there. There's about five guys who come running down the street with automatic weapons and shotguns. I mean, to this day, I can still hear the barrel of that gun dragging the ground. And it made me, I mean, it just turned me pale. I went back in the house, and Rita looked at me. I mean, I was pale. All the blood was gone. She said, "What's wrong?" And I told her what's happening. I said, "We got to go." So I would have never left 25 Common Street had it not been for a little extra push there. And so we sold out, bought the double wide trailer, and moved to Crestview. And that was really, after singing all those years and traveling, all that kind of thing, that was the launch. And Brother Sin gave me that first, and we worked for him for, I guess, 4 years. Rita was up at Baker School, which was prophetic in its significance, because when we moved from Crestview over to Pace to take the position in the early 90s, she was already at the furthest Okaloosa County school in the county of Okaloosa. So she drove back and forth for 3.5 years to school there at Baker School as a secretary. And Taylor started his kindergarten there. And then we moved back to Destin to take that church for 14 years at Destin Assembly. And then now coming up in October will be 15 years that we've been here at Pace. So that's kind of the round the circle backstory of that whole deal.
Well, it's a great story, and there's so many other questions I have to ask that we might have to make this a two-part series at some
Oh,
point. We may have
Jesus.
to have a sequel. Uh,
Sequel.
yes. Hey, when do you recall the very first time you stepped behind a pulpit and delivered a sermon? How old were you, and where was it?
Yes, it was horrible. As a matter of fact, here's the funny part of that. The first official time that I did was when Brother Sin gave me an opportunity. Um, when we were traveling and singing, and we would sing on the dais with you and your family many times. But Rita and I traveled around. I bought my grandparents' motorhome and traveled around. So we would exhort, how it is in between the songs and so forth. Funny story, we were up just north of a church, up north of where you are right now. I'll keep the church's name out of this. And I hope nobody gets offended by this, but it was funny at the time. I'm playing my bass guitar, 4-string bass. Rita's over there playing on the Casio, and the drum machine's going, and we're singing, and all of a sudden I plucked the string and it went, and I looked at the congregation, and I was serious, because I was innocent. I had no idea even what I was saying, but obviously the entire crowd did, and so did Rita. I was an innocent child, married, but a child. And I plucked the string, and I said, "Oh, folks, I'm sorry. I can't, we've got to stop here. I've just popped my G string." Yeah. Yeah, there it is. That's the X-rated version on WTJT today. So anyway, you didn't ask that question, did
I'm
you?
s-
So, brother,
Let me hit the edit button. Is there an edit button?
no edit button, boy. That one, I'm standing there paralyzed, and I'm literally asking, "What did I say? What did I say?" The crowd is busting up. Rita's cracking up. She can't
Uh,
even play anymore. Anyway, so the first time I preached, Lord God, you remember the mullet, the perm mullet in the
yep.
back of your head?
Yep.
Okay, had one of those crazy things. And it just a few years ago, Taylor, our son, was pilfering through some old VHSs and pulls out this one that's not marked, plugs it in, and it's my first preaching engagement at Auburn Assembly.
Wow.
I cannot believe, first of all, that Brother Sin gave me an opportunity because he had to be just dying out there on the pew. Because when I listened to it, Taylor was cracking up, rolling on the floor. I'm doing whatever it was that I was doing, and I'm thinking when I listened to that, I went, "Oh Lord, these poor people. They had to listen to this. This is horrible." So that was the first time I preached.
Well, see, I'm a little surprised at that then. I mean, because at the age of 9, you knew that you had been called to preach. By the time you're at Auburn, you're in your 20s, aren't you? 20, mid 20s, maybe?
Yeah. So late 20s is when we came to Pace. So yeah, mid 20s, something like that. I mean, we've been doing children's ministry and so forth, but not standing up in the pulpit doing the big church.
Hmm.
But you know, I went to spend the night, the one and only time I was ever allowed to spend the night over at somebody's house. My parents were pretty protective, and it was at my grandmother's house, my mom's mom. And I remember that one night, and whatever it was, she told me I was talking to her about ministry, and she was a very wonderful, spirit-filled woman, and she said something to me that stayed with me to this day. She said, I was talking about ministry, all excited about it, and I was just a young kid, and she says, "Well, just passively, well, Jesus didn't start his ministry till he was 30."
Hmm.
And I went, "Wow, you mean I got to wait?" And it's good. I mean, because in my 20s, I didn't have a clue what I was doing. And these wonderful men of God, Brother Sin, Brother Lowry, others gave me an opportunity, like I've done for others as well. And so it was a good thing. Everybody's got to get their start, you know, and usually it's not a great start.
So many other questions I wanted to ask. Running out of time though, but I do want
I'm
to
sorry.
ask. No, we wanted the backstory. So you provided a lot of insight into Joey Rogers, which is what we wanted for this conversation. But I did want to ask you how you maintain this fervor of being a progressive thinker from the standpoint of expanding a ministry. I mean, I'm not suggesting you're getting old, but you are up into the 50s now. So, so when you hit the 50s, sometimes there's a tendency maybe to get a little relaxed, and I hate to say lackadaisical, but
No,
maybe you
I get it.
start letting off the accelerator. You
Yeah.
don't. So, what is it that motivates you?
Well, I think probably it's just because I know that this is what I was called to do, and I'm not going to do anything else. I don't have any other options. I've always been motivated and always driven. When my dad would take all of us boys out and cut firewood back in the day, because I was raised in a house without central air and heat, I would always reach for the biggest log, 20 times larger than me. So I've always been like that. My folks have always been. Those kind of people. So it was built into me, and this just a drive. But I really believe it's the Holy Spirit that just keeps freshness going on. And I don't want to lay down and become apathetic or lazy. I'm not that kind of a person. In fact, it's very frustrating for me to not have something going on. Like maybe not just something, but like 20 things going on at the same time. So that's kind of the way I am. But I think it's the Spirit of God that keeps that vitality going. Yes.
And before we go, I know that you are in the midst of a effort to bring food, as you mentioned to begin with, food to those in need. So tell us about that project.
Well, Convoy of Hope, many people are familiar with that. They've rolled in here at hurricanes and have done a tremendous job. So we're partnering with them. Pace Assembly is distributing. In fact, even as I speak, there's notifications coming up. We're expecting a truckload of of supplies coming in very soon. And right now, we're distributing hundreds of boxes of fresh produce through the USDA farm plan that President Trump signed off a few weeks ago on to help get the um, what the farmers are growing is having a hard time getting to the people, and because trucks are stopped and processing plants and all that kind of thing. So through Convoy of Hope and through City Produce, which some folks in Fort Walton may be familiar, they're a very large company. They secured the USDA contract, and Pace Assembly is a distribution center for that. So we literally will have 5,000 boxes this week that we will distribute, and all the way through June the 30th. So if any of the listeners are needing help or they want to help somebody, they can contact the church, and we'll be happy to distribute what we can. There's many churches around that we're helping supply. Destin Assembly, uh, uh, down at Holly Assembly up in Bruton, at Jeff Skurlock's church up there, Milton First Assembly. So we're supplying churches there and in Pensacola. And then on Thursdays, starting at 8 o'clock every Thursday, we are doing a distribution, and people line up in their cars. They don't even have to get out. They drive right through. We pop the trunk, put it in there. And I'll tell you, Robert, the people that are hurting right now, the people that are in a loss, I'm not exaggerating when I say people coming through just weeping because they don't have the funds to do what they need to do. And this is helping to bridge that gap. And it's exactly what the church needs to be doing today.
So no eligibility requirements. If there is a need, they
No.
come, you fill that need as long as the food lasts.
Exactly. Typically on a Thursday before this, we would take the applications so that we're not, distributing to people that may be hitting the same places, because that happens. But at this point right now, if you get in the car and you get in that lineup, you come through there, we're going to put a box of groceries in your trunk.
We didn't even get to Revive, of course, the program heard here on WTJT, and you've been doing that for what, a couple of decades plus?
1994 is when we started Revive.
So
And
26 years.
yeah, I think we might be the oldest one on TJT at this point. And actually had a program on TJT that we did years ago, a youth program. But in 1994 is when we started. And for folks that don't know the background of Revive real fast, I literally was sitting with the 3 cassette players that I was doing my own mixing for the program. And I said, God, give me a name for this program. And Revive hit me. And since that time, it's been Revive.
26 years later, still Revive.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're very appreciative, thankful to be on WTJT and all that it's doing.
Hey, we're thankful to have you on. Thankful to have you, too, as someone we can chat with and get a backstory on. Joey Rogers, pastor of the Pace Assembly of God. Joey, thanks so much for sharing with us.
Thanks so much, Robert, for the opportunity. Look forward to doing it again sometime.